Hey, quick fact, 97% of you watching aren't subscribed. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It's free, helps the channel grow, and keeps you in the loop. Thanks for your support.
Arctic War 5. Everyone's spirits dropped as they heard this. Asking Uncle Lou what they should do, they crowded him. Aren't they done for if Uncle Lou's statement is accurate? A conflict is starting. Han Fong read the message with suspicion. I believe I had heard about this in a past life as well. Glass Man said, we must begin taking action to save ourselves if Uncle Lou's prediction is accurate. Due to their failure to hoard enough food, some of the neighborhood's owners had already ran out. Moreover, we don't have a confirmed time of arrival of the support resources from the government. I think we should start organizing ourselves first and help those owners who are facing difficulties. Then, to add a dramatic effect, Glass Man continued in a high-pitched voice, suggesting that the owners with ample food supplies should donate some of it to support the other owners who had run out as a way to show his commitment he was willing to start. Glass's Man was prepared to give up half of his food stockpiles, and anyone in need should seek him out at any moment. The crowd started whispering as they heard this. Everyone was moved by Glass Man's deed of giving and kindness, and he was correct. To strive to overcome this situation collectively, everyone in our neighborhood should support one another. Those families cannot be allowed to starve in this frigid climate. You may also count me in on the donation, everyone. How about you? Lee Hyena, will you also be making a donation? After reading the message, Hyona's expression darkened. She called Wu Kanan a crazy bastard because she was furious. He had to ask her despite the chat group's large number of members. Is it because I've already turned you down? Puna took on a sorrowful look and apologized, saying she didn't have any spare food supplies at home. Hearing this, one of her bootlickers immediately came to her defense question. Why Wakchuanan had to ask Kona? She didn't even have enough for herself, like she said. How about asking someone else? Wu Kanan answered that he had no idea and that all he could hope for was that everyone would band together and support one another. However, he will not be contributing what Wu if they are unable to ensure genuine unity among themselves. Nobody wants to be a sucker. Therefore, what Ya stated wasn't a lie after all. As everyone considered their next course of action, the crowd went silent for a while after hearing this. A few seconds later, one of the tenants in the throng yelled for everyone to know that he wanted to contribute. Others joined in after hearing this and donated all they could, including food, clothing, medicine, warm water, and other items. Glass Man expressed his thanks in place of the poor owners. Then he suggested they appoint someone to be in charge of keeping the supplies gathered due to their quantity, and just like that, the interim owners committee was formed, and at the head was Glass's Man. They were to serve as a temporary emergency committee in charge of organizing and assisting with the donated goods. Han Fong was unable to contain his laughter. He recalls this incident from his past life as well, and if Han Fong is right, the interim committee was really a plot to embezzle the resources of everyone who was gullible enough to trust them. The days passed. It was July 19th and the temperature outside had already dropped to -40 degrees. The central heating system was no longer in working condition due to the extreme weather. Everyone thought of ways to keep themselves warm and maintain their body temperature. It was the same as his previous life, and this was just the beginning, because the situation will only continue to get worse. But all these did not affect Han Fong. His heating system had enough to last. For years, Han Fong was playing a video game, and in front of him was various snacks and drinks. A glass of refreshing Coca-Cola and an enticing cake were even part. It was as if the world outside was just an illusion. Han Fong was engrossed in his game until his phone rang, picking up the call. The caller told Han Fong he was the person in charge of Block 8 of the building, and Han Fong, being the owner of apartment 1801 and part of Block 8, should head down to the basement car park to shovel snow outside. However, upon hearing that he had to shovel snow outside, he was instantly annoyed. You see, the snow outside at this moment was so heavy that it would be considered suicide to use the means of manpower to clear it. About 30 minutes later, Han Fong, with a dejected attitude, arrived at the first floor's main lobby. Han Fong only chose to join his block's shoveling crew because he didn't want to raise trouble with his neighbors. He made the decision to minimize the likelihood that his neighbors would discover his covert hoarding. Nevertheless, everyone was astounded by the amount of snow that had accumulated outside, which had already blocked up the first floor door. Their efforts to clear the snow yesterday were in vain. After realizing this, they ultimately made the decision to open the door first in order to get a sense of what they would be dealing with. A fatty with an orange scarf called out to Han Fong Fong to offer a helping hand in opening the door. Although Han Fong hated every moment he spent there, he approached the door anyway. Then, on the count of 3, the three with a considerable amount of effort forcefully opened the door. Immediately upon opening, the massive blizzard that swept the entire area gave everyone the chill. They would have immediately gotten a frostbite if they hadn't had heavy clothes on. Everyone had to even close their eyes due to the intense wind that was blowing in. The cold started to make Han Fong shiver a lot. Going outside could result in their death or severe frostbite. Only a fool would venture outside to shovel snow in the extreme conditions. When someone entered at that very moment, I heard their voice. Startled, Han Fong recognized the voice without turning to check behind him. Naturally, Lai was the one who entered and called everyone a coward. An overpowering attitude was what everyone needed in order to complete the tasks at hand. Li was dressed as though it were a typical winter day, and Han Fong looked at her incredulously. Then, because the snow outside wasn't a joke, he warns life not to be courageous. They should try waiting it out until the snowstorm stops. But Lai, being his usual self, scoffs at the idea. He took a long drag of his cigarette, then dived right into the snow with his self-proclaiming, imposing attitude. Li rushed into the pile of snow as everyone watches. Seconds later, the only thing visible was his shaped path, created when he decided to flirt with death. Li was less than 30 seconds inside the pile of snow when he cried repeatedly for help. 2 neighbors offered their assistance in dragging his freezing body out. Li's face was blue as he coughed violently. They quickly shut the door tightly after. At this moment, Han Fong asked with concern if Li was alright, but there was no reply as Li shivered uncontrollably. Seeing this, Han Fong told everyone to call it a day. They had no way of knowing when the snowstorm will stop, so he suggested that they go back, look for the person in charge. At the building's car park to sign their attendance, it was evident that the current degree of the snowstorm can no longer be solved with manpower back inside. The tenants had used the building's car park as a meeting ground for everyone. Glasses Guy attempted to reassure the anxious tenants that patience was required at this point. Since the snow had actually gotten too thick to clear right now, their only choice was to wait for it to soften before continuing as usual. Additionally, their donations would be collected at a station in the basement parking lot. Had an annoyed look on his face. He was waiting in line to sign the attendance sheet, and upon seeing Glasses Man, he wondered if he was the person named JNG, the one that spearheaded the interim owners committee to scam its donors. At the same time, Zhang once again thanked everyone for their donation. Zhang continued that he honestly—
Quick fact, 97% of you watching aren't subscribed. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It's free, helps the channel grow, and keeps you in the loop. Thanks for your support.
Didn't expect so many owners to donate their resources. Their generosity would help anyone in need or facing any difficulty in these hard times. Again, Glasses Man thanked the donors in place of their helpless neighbors. Hearing this, everyone was all smiles, thinking it would be a smooth sailing. From this point forth, they began to compliment each other, as some commented that it was the right thing to do. They need to help each other in this difficult times. As long as they're united, they would be able to get through this crisis. Hearing this, Han Fong sighed in a mocking demeanor. He silently thought, warning everyone to just wait. The snow was not going to end, and very soon they were going to regret their actions. After they were done with the signing, Li, who was still shivering, told Han Fong he was heading upstairs first. Hearing this, Han Fong replied that he understood, but at that moment a familiar figure caught his attention. In front of him was no other than head nurse Jean, who was preoccupied with maneuvering through the crowd with her stuff. She was carrying a few boxes when she was pushed by someone unintentionally, but luckily for her, she was caught by Han Fong. Nurse Jean was shocked to see him when she opened her eyes just before she fell. When she first saw Han Fong, she knew who he was, and her first query was about his leg after that. Nurse Jean inquired as to whether Han Fong's leg had already recovered. Hearing the query, Han Fong hurriedly made up an excuse on the spot and released Nurse Jen, pointing his hands all over the place. According to Han Fong, a fractured ankle is nothing to him because he has an amazing recovery speed from his youth. In a matter of days, he was fully recovered. Hearing this, Jean, although she might be a head nurse, but due to her innocent and gullible nature, she believed Han Fong on the spot, her eyes beaming with excitement. As she exclaims how awesome Han Fong's situation was. Han Fong offered to carry the boxes for Nurse Jen, but she replied that it was fine. Han Fong still insisted as Nurse General commented that the boxes were very heavy. "Don't worry, I'm strong and capable. You can take this as a form of a thank you for helping me with my bandages at the hospital," he said. Hearing this, Nurse Jean agreed. As she handed them over, Han Fong nearly collapsed. Han Jean questioned what was inside the boxes because they were definitely very hefty. In response, Nurse Jean stated that the majority of the items were medical supplies, which she was giving to the committee. Observing Han Fong's difficulty walking, Nurse Jean smiled warmly, asked to carry them because it looks like it was too heavy for Han Fong. But Han Fong said that he didn't feel like he's carrying anything at all, so it was fine. Hearing this, Nurse Jean replied that she might look small, but she is actually stronger than most guys, so Han Fong shouldn't push himself too hard just to help her. Curious, Han Fong asked if she had always been strong from a younger age. Not really, there's really a reason behind it. Nurse Jean said this with a sad demeanor, recalling something, but upon seeing Han Fong's curious stare, she decided against saying anything. She apologized, saying that it was nothing serious worth mentioning. It was just something she actually couldn't explain anyway. At that moment, Nurse Jean recalls never asking Han Fong's name. "Han Fong, my name is Han Fong." Hearing this, Nurse Jean also introduced herself, mentioning that her name was Jean Shu. "It's a pleasure to meet you," she said. Seeing Jean's radiant smile, Han Fong began to blush like a cherry tomato. Jinui asked what Han Fong does for a living. "Oh, about that, I'm unemployed." Hearing this, Jin Shira was a little taken aback. Seeing this, Han Fong asked what was so surprising about an unemployed person. Before Jean could explain herself, someone bumped into her from behind, causing her to crash into Han Fong. Her bouncing melons were the first to make contact, and immediately, as Han Fong felt those heavenly twin beauties, their degree of softness made Han Feng's eyes bulged out as he stares at them with an undivided attention. Jean quickly retreated, apologizing as usual. Han Fong replied that it was fine. After all, it wasn't her doing. Unbeknownst to the two, hyena was passing by and she immediately spotted Han Fong, seeing a possible threat. Asking why she hadn't been told that Han Fong was at the parking lot, Hyuna called out to him. Then, in an attempt to maintain control, Hyuna hurried over and took Han Fong's arm. Not understanding that she had been beaten in that department, she also purposefully gave Han Fong a tight hug. From that point forth, Hyuna asked Han Fong if Jean was his friend. At that moment, before Han Fong could even get a word out, Jean had already retrieved her boxes from Han Fong and was leaving with an embarrassing look as if she was caught doing something she shouldn't. She told the two to continue chatting while she head to the committee station. There was no need to disturb Han Fong any further. Jean said she could carry the boxes the rest of the way alone after thanking Han Fong. That's what those hasty remarks were. Han Fong's sole response was, "Okay." Jean hurried out as if it was an emergency. Staring at Jean's hurried pace, Han Fong questioned Hyuna why she came over to interrupt them. Hearing this, Hyuna feigned a bright smile and replied that she just wanted to say hello. She had merely come to the parking lot to pick up supplies, but she wanted to question Han Fong about why he hadn't gotten back to her as he had promised. "I started to worry that you might have suffered a serious injury." With an uneasy smile, Han Fong clumsily rubbed the back of his neck, claiming that he was on the verge of messaging Hyuna. When Hyuna heard this, he called Han Fong out on his deception. She went on to say that she had just noticed Han Fong and Jean having a pleasant conversation. Then, with a pleading gesture and a warm smile, Hyuna asked Han Fong if he had any spare food supplies in his apartment. If he has, can he share some with her because she had almost run out of food? Han Fong suddenly smirks when he heard this. He informed Hannah that although he didn't have much food left, he would be happy to give her some. But he sent a message a few days ago, but Hyuna hasn't responded yet, so how about it? You wish to spend a few days with me at my house? With a smug expression, Han Fong asked. After learning this, Hannah could not speak. She was shocked by Han Fong's newly found boldness. Hannah got over her initial shock and told Han Fong that she didn't understand what he meant at that time, but if Han Fong wanted to have a chat with her, he could do so online. Listening to this, Han Fong said, Hyuna looks like she wasn't on board with the idea, and he started to leave after spending no more time with her. He was therefore returning to his residence. When Hyuna heard this, her face grew angry, but she quickly grabbed Han Feng's jacket and requested him to wait after realizing he wasn't playing around. She proceeds to say that recently she feels like Han Fong had changed. Is Han Fong doubting her feelings about him? He should know that she had always been very serious about her feelings towards him. She simply doesn't want everyone to believe that she is only with him because he has become wealthy. Please give her a little more time, Han Fong. With the same adorable, pathetic, and dejected expression that she always wears on her bootlockers, Hyuna asked this question. Being well aware of Hannah's intentions, Han Fong wondered what he would have done if he had trusted her and not already passed away. Right now, Han Fong was desperate to get rid of Hannah and remove her hideous disguise. Also, if he didn't find the identity of the man behind Hyena, then wait. Why do I have to look for him? Han Fong, at that moment, suddenly had an idea, a brilliant one. He just needed to do exactly what he did in his previous life, and Hyuna will bring over his boyfriend again. Han Fong just had to be patient and get ready for it. The same is true of these ideas. Han Fong modified his approach. He explained to Hyena that he was only making fun of her. She was somewhat taken aback by this realization, so Han Fong took her by the arms and explained that he was merely kidding about as he awaited her response. But now that he knows it, he will deliver some food supplies to her by tomorrow. Hearing this, Hyuna praised Han Fong, saying that he was the best. Hyena hurried to get out of there first. She waved goodbye and informed Han Fong that she was going back first, satisfied that her wish had been fulfilled, and simply waved her off and told her to be careful. Hyuna couldn't help but smile sneakily from ear to ear as she turned to go, just for herself. Conversely, however, 2 days went by at a snail's pace, and the snowstorm outside hadn't shown any signs of abating. Hyuna had been blowing up his phone non-stop asking what Han Fong had been doing. Is he going to deliver the supplies like he said he would? Why didn't he respond to her? The messages simply continued to arrive. But Han Fong was unconcerned about it. A delectable prepared dish was placed in front of him. When he took a bite, Han Fong was in a state of bliss and utterly delighted by the taste. He believed it, and the weather was too ideal for such a pleasant and warm meal.
If you liked this episode, then don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. The next episode of this manhwa will be released once this part reaches 1,000 views or 5 comments requesting the next part.